There is a specific type of tiredness that only occurs in later life. At 75, King Charles ought to be content with the happiness of his grandchildren and the gentle light of his legacy. Rather, the defendant is his own brother, and he is presiding over a hushed courtroom. Two boys used to share everything in the Windsor nursery. Those same hallways feel oppressive today. The reality of a man donning two out-of-date masks is as follows. One is owned by the brother who recalls the childhood secrets that were revealed. The other belongs to the ruler who recognizes that the crown is a brittle object that can be broken by the shame of another person. Although the scandals served as the impetus, the true harm was done behind closed doors. Being deceived by a sibling is a grief that leaves a lasting mark on the soul. Knowing that Andrew looked him in the eye and chose dishonesty over the honor of the family name, Charles feels the pain of every deleted file and every startling fact. A falsehood this big functions as a shudder in the king's world's basis. George V, his grandfather, cleared the way for him. The world witnessed a monarch sacrifice Nicholas II, his own cousin, to the flames of revolution in 1917. The betrayal was cold and necessary to keep the British throne intact. Charles still has to deal with that historical echo. He is aware that mercy is no longer a luxury. He needs to break the link that once held him in place in order to safeguard the institution. The greatest cost is that of a brother. Can cover the cost of a crown. February 19, 2026. Westminster's pealing bells are typically used to commemorate royal birthdays. The hard, regular knock of authority at the Royal Lodge door was the sole sound on Prince Andrew's 66th. At last, fresh accusations had emerging from the shadows of the past. These were now a legal indictment involving the disclosure of private trade reports rather than only rumors of bad judgment. Being associated with Jeffrey Epstein in a court document is a betrayal that penetrates the structure of royal duty. This was the last unmasking moment for Charles, who has spent decades building a reputation for service. Brotherly disagreement over the truth was no longer an option. It was a state issue. The change was abrupt and emotionless. The harsh, practical walls of Marsh Farm at Sandringham took the place of the expansive splendor of Royal Lodge. For a fallen prince, a 5-bedroom farmhouse is a prison, but it is a generous home for any man. The atmosphere above the estate is currently a no-fly zone that is severely enforced. Andrew's comfort is not the purpose of this shield. It is to shield the monarchy from the spectacle of his demise. He now has to live inside high-security perimeters and under constant surveillance. In their evaluation, the king's advisors were surgical. Be pulled down or disassociate yourself. Charles has been compelled to treat his brother like a stranger in order to preserve the throne. Rex v. Mountbatten-Windsor is not a family tragedy. It is the legislation claiming total, icy control over the historical assertions of royal ancestry. At last, Charles has come to terms with the fact that kindness is an expensive luxury. He is no longer merely a brother. The sovereign is him. An invisible boundary has been drawn across Sandringham's territory by legal counsel. This is the icy reality of a king overseeing a case that was filed in his own name. The entire legal process might potentially be destroyed by a single private discussion. The defense may call a king to testify if Charles talks to Andrew. A monarch is prohibited by British law from testifying against himself. It is no longer an option to remain silent. It is required under the Constitution. Princess Anne and Prince Edward now bear the human burden while Charles is imprisoned behind this wall of authority. They travelled silently to the farmhouse in April. They did not travel as the Crown's delegates. They travelled together as siblings. They had a dismal report. Within the bleak walls of Marsh Farm, they discovered a man shorn of his grandeur. His mental state was fragile and deteriorating. Edward and Anne have turned into. The king is no longer allowed to utilize the eyes and ears. They fill the void left by Charles's legal prohibition. It's an odd contemporary pains. To find out whether his own brother is thriving in the exile he imposed, the king must rely on his sister. The king's office does not allow for a softening of the heart. He doesn't want to lend a hand because he can still clearly recall the tricks. Charles observes the distance from the main house's windows. As the ruler, he is responsible for safeguarding the organization, even if it entails giving mercy to people who don't wear the crown. Not only has the relationship inside the family been damaged, it is now institutionalized. At last, the tie has been cut, leaving a brother with his quiet and a king with his duty. Charles is becoming more than just silent. This amputation was done on purpose. The only way the family survived in 1936 was by severing Edward VII. Knowing that pity for one man has turned into a threat to the entire institution, the king now bears the same enormous duty. This calls for suppression of personal sorrow that most people would be devastated by. Those on the perimeter are being pushed toward the brink by the waves of this isolation, while the king withdraws into the icy safety of duty. For 40 years, Sarah Ferguson has balanced on the brink of royal grace. She is now standing atop a cliff that is ultimately collapsing. There was more to the eviction from Royal Lodge than just a move. It was the elimination of her safety net in public. The bills are growing and the old shadows are returning without the crown's protection. Are getting closer. The hand can be forced by desperation. According to reports, Sarah is now focused on Florida and the intricate world of Tiger Woods. Although this relationship appears startling, it adheres to a very particular psychological structure. Woods is a man who is currently plagued by his own problems and physical weakness. There is a desperate need to locate someone else at your lowest point when your own world is on fire. Creates a fleeting sense of purpose. Her inner circle recognizes that these relationships are transactional. It is searching for a rich donor to take the position of the palace checkbook. However, there is a deeper, more personal sorrow hidden behind the pursuit of a billionaire's favor. It is the weary life of a woman who has at last run out of palaces in which to hide. Sarah uses the reflected light of others to try to restore her life, while Charles uses distance to guard the crown. In a reign where errors are no longer tolerated, this is the ultimate cost of being a royal outsider. In search of a life raft in a storm typically results in another person drowning. The instant Tiger Woods' most recent arrest made headlines, Sarah's dream of a Florida sanctuary was dashed. Another icon cannot be saved by a fallen one. For those attempting to escape their own shadows, the collision and the accusations against Woods act as a harsh mirror. The day of royal immunity is coming to an end. The elite were previously protected by an invisible wall, but it is now just a heap of debris. The most difficult decision a king can make has been made by Charles. By allowing this, he is depriving the family name of its ability to be protected when the law takes his brother. The old strategies of pleading for sympathy are no longer effective. A public that expects accountability above all else will no longer accept a fragile mental state as an excuse. A broken prince is not visible to the contemporary viewer. They witness a man who will eventually have to enter the same courtroom as everyone else. The monarchy is turning into a stronghold where only loyalty and tenacity endure. The winds that batter everyone else have left them outside. All of us. Charles bears this burden. By cutting his own blood, he has defended the institution. It is a solitary but essential triumph. The ultimate cost of the king's crown is the quiet in his study. I want to know if you think this degree of family sacrifice is necessary for the institution to survive. Leave a comment below with your opinions. To ensure you don't miss our upcoming installment, subscribe. I'll see you in the upcoming videos.